May we request the Honorable Member of Parliament, Sheikh Ali, to lead the chamber in the opening prayer.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Allahumma arinal haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arinal batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba ya Allah. Allahumma aslih lana dinana alladhi huwa ismatu amrina wa aslih lana dunyana allati fiha ma'ashuna wa aslih lana akhiratana allati ilayha maduna ya Allah. Allahumma la taj'alid dunya akbar hammina wa la mablagha ilmina ya Allah. Allahumma waffiqna lima tuhibbu wa tarda. Allahumma rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Please remain standing for the Philippine National Anthem and the Bangsamoro Hymn.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, ewas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong bangaw, ay hinatang tulatawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang islang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at karoon niya kailan pang ay di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walhagin pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya na pagkay magagin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Simula noon hanggang ngayon, isa ang naging layon. Magkaisa at magbuklod, karitingan ay marugtong. Tumayo tayo mula sa hamon ng nakaraan, niyakos ang panganib na umanlang. Pinangako sa puso at paniniwala, ang ginhawa para sa kabataan. Bangsamoro ay tagumpay, bunga ng pawis, dugo at buhay. Kapayapaan, katarungan, ay atin ang nakamtan. Pagpalain Bangsamoro, 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 lagi kang mamahalin. Walang pipigil sa damdamin, mga pangako'y tutuparin. Habang buhay kami sa'yo'y magbabantay, mananatili sa puso't isipan. Ang kahapong humintay na nagbuwis ng buhay, nasa piling na ng may kapal. Bangsamoro ay tagumpay, bunga ng pawis, dugo at buhay. Kapayapaan, ay atin ang nakamtan. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, pagpalaing Bangsamoro.
Secretariat is directed to proceed with the roll call.
The members of the BTA Parliament, the Honorables Abbas Ahmad, Abbas Harun,
Present.
Abbas Tulkarnain, Abbas Basit Sarip,
Present.
Abu Mujib, Adyaw Rahman Alonto, Ahang Abdullah, Alamia Laisa, Alauddin Faiz, Ali Ibrahim, Ali Lanang Jr., Ali Edi Mapag, Ali El Cesar,
Present.
Amuluto Suarto, Ampatuan Baintan, Anayatin Susana, Asmawil Muslima, Balindong Ali Pangalian,
Present.
Bara Hamid Aminuddin,
Present.
Basman Anna Tarhata, Burahan Abraham, Kandao Bay Maleha,
Present po.
Nandamon Latif Maysara,
Present. Present.
Yamla Musa, Dipatuan Saprula, Ibrahim Ahod, Ismail Haji Abdulaziz,
Present.
Gaya Abdullah, Gera Edward, Hasim Abdullah,
Present.
Hasan Atimil, Iqbal Muhager, Ismail Rasul, Jajuri Raisa, Jakilan Muslimin, Jikiri Al-Amin, Karon Bainon, Lidasan Dato Mussolini, Loong Don Mustafa, Lorena Jose Ribani, Makako Abdurrauf, Makapaar Abdullah, Makaraya Jamil, Makasalong Marjani, Manguda Dato Kadafe,
Present. Pangudod dato. Present.
Mantawil Malik, Mastura Dato Takaw, Mastura City Sihara, Mawali Lamil Bahara, Mitibang Dato Mitpantaw, Mitmog Rasul, Mujahid Abdul Muhammad, Munoz Hussein, Oranon Soy, Pakasa Mobaida, Pak Abdulahab, Pangandaman Nabila Margarita,
Present.
Ramos Jamila,
Present.
Rimbang Sultan Edrisa Nasser,
Sir, present.
Sakar Modayaw,
Present.
Salendab Said, Sali Al-Said, Saliga Romeo, Salik Ali, Sangki Ali, Sani Punduma, Satar Al-Sad, Sema Omar Yasser, Sema Romeo, Sheikh Said,
Present.
Silongan Aida, Sulaiman Ali, Abu Paisalin, Tan Nabil,
Present.
Uja Sahi, Ulama Milanio,
Present.
Usman Asfar, Jacob Mohammed, UAK Narciso.
Mr. Speaker, responding to the call were 25 members inside the plenary hall, 28 members participating via Zoom, for a total of 53 members of this Honorable Parliament. The presence of a quorum is therefore certified.
With 53 members responded to the roll call, constituting a quorum as certified by the Secretary General, Bangsamoro Parliament will now proceed with the conduct of its official business. We now recognize the Honorable Majority Leader, MP Attorney Lanong Ali Jr.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Speaker of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority Parliament, Attorney Ali Pangalian Palindong, Honorable Deputy Speaker Zia Rahman Jong, Honorable members of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, members of the Secretariat, staff of the MPs, guests, visitors, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 6, reading and approval of the journal of the previous session. I move, Mr. Speaker, to dispense with the reading of Journal 91 of February 22, 2022 session, and I further move for the approval of the same, Mr. Speaker.
There is a motion that the reading of the journal of the previous session be dispensed with. Move with its approval. It has been seconded. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, we proceed now to item number 7, resolutions. May we request the Secretary General to read the first proposed resolution for today's session, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary General is so directed.
Proposed Resolution Number 581. Resolution urging the reversion of the unobligated funds of fiscal year 2020 and 2021 to the Bangsamoro Treasury under a special fund reappropriation. The principal authors are MPs Baintan A. Ampatuan and Amil Bahar S. Mawalil, and the co-authors are MPs Nabil A. Tan, Shaur Rahman Alonto Adjong, Jamel D. Macaraya, Laisa M. Alamia, Rasul Y. Mitmog Jr., Suharto M. Amuludto, Don Mustafa A. Loong, and Rasul A. Ismail.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Finance, Budget and Management.
There's a motion that 1 be referred to the Committee on Finance, Budget, Management. It has been seconded.
The motion.
Is referred to the said committee.
Mr. Speaker, may we request again the Secretary General to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so directed to read title of PR 639, including the authors and the co-authors.
Proposed Resolution Number 639. Resolution expressing the utmost support of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority to the establishment of the BARM Business Council. The sole principal author is MP Shaur Rahman Alonto Adjong, and the co-authors are MPs Ana Tarhata S. Basman, Raisa H. Jajuri, Abdul Muhin A. Mujahid, and Ubaida C. Pakasan.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Trade, Investment and Tourism.
There's a motion that PR 639 be referred to the Committee on Trade, Investment and Tourism. Is there any objection? Hearing none, PR 639 is hereby referred to the Committee on Trade, Investment and Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, again, we request the Secretary General to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is directed to read the title of PR 675, including the author, name of the author.
Proposed Resolution Number 675. Resolution expressing deepest sympathy to the ferocity suffered by Ukrainian civilian citizens and calling that the belligerent parties resort to diplomatic remedies to end hostilities. Authored by MP Romeo C. Saliga.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion that PR 675 be treated as simple resolution and shall be included in the business for the day. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none. Yes, what's the pleasure of the gentleman from Marawi City, MP Duma Sani? MP Sani is recognized.
Uh, with regard to this expressing deep sympathy to the ferocity suffered by the Ukrainian, but let's look into the what happened also to the Palestinian, the Arabs, Syria, of which we have not said anything regarding this matter. So that if we look only into the Ukrainian suffering, how about the Palestinians? How about the Libyans? To the extent that they even killed, assassinated the leaders. No? But this question is between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, we sympathize with any country that is being abused. No? But it has still to be proven. We have to look into the double standard of Europe, so with America, that they even sanctioned Russia, but there was no sanction during the time when they attacked Libya, when they attacked Iraq, another Islamic country, just because they are Muslims. Much more for what is happening now, that we never accused or say that the Israeli are doing apartheid, abuses, discrimination to the Palestinian. So why is it now that we express deep sympathy to the Ukrainians, while there was no such thing that we sympathize with those children, women, and old that suffered in Palestine? So with this, I don't know if we have to include even those countries or areas wherein Muslims were being molested. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you. So we will treat the manifestation of MP Sani
We
as
can
a
discuss
simple
that. Yes, we
manifestation.
can discuss that, Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
during the
Yes,
business
thank
for
you.
the day, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. So again, there's a motion that PR 675 be treated as a simple resolution and be included in the business for the day. Is there any objection to that motion? Hearing none, PR 675 is hereby treated as simple resolution and now included in the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is directed to read proposed title and the author of PR 678.
Proposed resolution number 678. Resolution requesting the Ministry on Indigenous Peoples Affairs to conduct an inventory of ancestral domain claims of NMIPs within Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, authored by MP Romeo C. Saliga.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to refer this to the Committee on Indigenous Peoples Affairs.
There's a motion 7A referred to the Committee on Indigenous Committee the Peoples. It's been seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 678 is referred to the Committee on Indigenous and Cultural Minorities.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, again, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so requested.
Proposed resolution number 681. Resolution expressing gratitude to His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte for appointing Attorney Abdullah Mamao as the new Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers, authored by MP Sultan Idrisa H. N. Ringgam.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as a simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion that PR 681 is to be treated as simple resolution and be transferred to the business for the day. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 681 is hereby treated as simple resolution and shall now be included in the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so requested.
Number 682. Resolution expressing gratitude to His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte for appointing Attorney Giling A. Mamonjong as the new Secretary of the Commission on Muslim Filipinos. Authored by MP Sultan Idrisa H. N. Rimbang.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
It's a motion that PR 682 be treated as simple resolution and included in the business for the day. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 682 is now treated as simple resolution and is included in the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposal.
Secretary General is so requested.
Proposed Resolution Number 683. Resolution expressing gratitude to His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte for appointing Attorney Basari D. Mapupuno as the new Mindanao State University System President, authored by MP Sultan Idrisa H. N. Rimbang.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
There's a motion that's PR 683 be treated as simple resolution and be included in the business for the day. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 683 is hereby treated as simple resolution is now included in the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
Secretary General is so requested.
Proposed Resolution Number 691. Proposed Resolution Number 684. Resolution expressing gratitude to His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte for appointing Attorney Saidamin P. Pangarungan as the new Commission on Elections Interim Chairman. Authored by MP Sultan Idrisa H. N. Rimbang.
Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of the day.
Again, there's a motion that PR 684 be treated as simple resolution and be included in the business for the day. Any objection? Hearing none, PR 691 is now treated as simple resolution and is included in the business for the day.
Again, Mr. Speaker, may we request the Secretary to read the next proposed resolution.
So, Secretary General is so requested.
Proposed Resolution Number 691. Resolution expressing the Bangsamoro Transition Authority's highest sense of gratitude to His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte for appointing Attorney Saidamin B. Pangarungan as Chairman of the Commission on Elections, Attorney Abdullah D. Mamao as Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers, Attorney Giling A. Mamonjong as Secretary of the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, Attorney Basari D. Mapupuno as President of the Mindanao State University, and all the new appointees who hail from the Bangsamoro region, as well as congratulating them all on their respective new positions. This is principally authored by MPs Nabila Margarita P. Pangandaman and Omar Yasser C. Sema, and co-authored by MPs Hatimili Hasan, Paisalin P. Tago, by Malaya Bicandao, Susana S. Anayatin, Don Mustafa A. Luong, Maysara D. Latif, Eddie M. Ali, Ubaida D. Sipakasem, Jamila Ramos, Punduma Sani, Rasol Ismael, and Bainon Caron.
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to treat this as simple resolution and be transferred for the business of
It's a motion that PR 691 be treated as simple resolution and be included in the business for the day. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, PR 691 is hereby treated as simple resolution and is now included in the business for the day.
And now, Mr. Speaker, we are now on item number 9, second stage of bills. BTA Parliament Bill number 72, entitled An Act Establishing and Constructing a Level 1 Municipal Hospital with a 25-bed capacity in Municipality of Capay, Lanao del Sur, and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. We may now respectfully the principal author, MP Saprola de Patuan, to deliver his sponsorship speech. May we inquire with the Secretariat whether he is present in the Zoom.
MP, the gentleman from Ganasi. MP Dr. Safrula Dipatuan is recognized. Is he there? Is he on Zoom?
In that sense, Mr. Speaker, I move to defer consideration of a BTA Parliament Bill number 72 to other session days. Maybe tomorrow, Mr. Speaker.
I see a couple of co-authors here. Should we at least be lenient to allow co-authors to render authorship speech instead of the good gentleman from Ganasi? Would the majority leader allow that?
Only
There are
if,
several co-authors
yes, only
listed.
if Mr. Speaker, MPs of the Patuan would allow to deliver the co-authorship.
So what would
The
be the,
co-authors, Mr.
what is
Speaker.
the pleasure of the
As,
majority
we,
leader?
per agreement in the previous session, Mr. Speaker, only authors. If there are many principal authors, Mr. Speaker, they can deliver their sponsorship speech. But in this case, only one principal authors and the others are co-authors. In this situation, Mr. Speaker, according to the rules, it must be with the consent of the principal authors, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so under the House rules, it would be the primary author of a measure that is allowed to render authorship
Yes,
speech.
Mr. Speaker.
In this case, if he or she is absent, with the recommendation of the principal author, then we will allow other co-authors
Authors, Mr. Speaker.
to read committee or authorship speech on his or her behalf.
Yes,
So
Mr.
the
Speaker.
treatment of this Parliament Bill 172 as motion moved by the majority leader is to defer
To
the
defer,
consideration of BTA Bill number 172 under second stage bills tomorrow, provided that MP Safrula Dipatuan would be present on tomorrow's session. So the BTA Bill number 172 with the consideration of the authorship speech is hereby deferred.
Yes,
Please
Mr.
proceed,
Speaker,
Majority
we
Leader.
proceed to the business of the day. First of the consideration, Mr. Speaker, is a proposed resolution number 675. PR number 675, entitled Resolution Expressing Deepest Sympathy to the Ferocity Suffered by your Kenyan civilian citizen and calling that the belligerent parties resort to diplomatic remedies to end hostilities, Mr. Speaker. In this situation, Mr. Speaker,
I think we should
may we first recognize the principal author, Mr. Speaker, MP Romeo Saligo,
Yes.
who is present to shed lights on this background of this resolution. Mr.
So before we allow the principal author of this measure, we should at least open the period of debate
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
and interpellation, majority leader, so that there will be a smooth discussion on the floor.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to open the period of interpellation and debate.
Period of interpellation and debate is hereby open. We now recognize the principal author of PR 675, the Honorable gentleman from Maguindanao, MP Romeo Saliga, and I saw MP Tago was raising his hand. Perhaps he would avail of the period of interpellation. First, we will allow MP Saliga to enlighten the chamber the need for the Parliament to support this measure. MP Saliga, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's a public knowledge among all of us to what is happening now in Russia, particularly, and Ukraine, or that was the conflict there. Now, as a member of this Bangsamoro Transition Authority, I think it's incumbent upon us to really sympathize with, especially with civilians who have nothing to do with the conflict, those innocent people who were killed by this ongoing conflict. And violence is really I think we have even included that in the Bangsamoro Organic Law, that violence really especially in our case, do not have any place. So we need to condemn it because it's like a war, really violates the life of every citizen, the right to life. And as we know, we are also agree to respect all international treaties and agreement. And I think the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights is one of them, which seeks to UDHR is an international agreement that were adopted by the UN, and I think the Philippine government is a signatory to that, wherein the rights and freedom of all human beings are recognized. And in this case, I think it applies in the case of of the people in Ukraine. Whether it is in Ukraine or anywhere else, if it is violence, I think we need to condemn it. I heard the manifestation of MP Pundo Masani, and we had been also undergone to the same experiences. And why it is only now, I think we should have also passed similar resolutions to other countries who have encountered the same experience.
To my colleagues and the guests in this hall, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Indeed, I believe that is precisely true, that we should condemn any acts of atrocities or whatever is color, race, or creed, or religion. We should condemn it. Especially so in the Holy Quran, if you kill one innocent person, as if you have killed the entire humankind, the entire universe. That's why when the case has been filed against killer or murderer, it is a case of people of the Philippines or people of the United States of America, not the offended party, because you have killed all persons in the humankind. I have, before I make interpellation, Mr. Speaker, I have to make comment first on the statement of my senior MP Sultan Pundo Masani regarding this resolution, why now we condemn such acts. We have a resolution condemning acts and it happens in Ukraine, and what happens to the Muslims that was being bombed in Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, and so many other countries, not to mention the other non-Muslim countries. Do we have a similar resolution for that? And for the record, because MP Sultan Pundo Masani is not around, when Israel bombed Gaza and West Bank, we have a strong resolution condemning the acts, because we are the occurrence of it is present. We are here on the Libya and the Syria. We are not yet members of the parliament, so we cannot condemn something because we are not yet here in the parliament. But definitely, any acts that is committed against human beings, atrocities or genocide for that matter, we condemn here in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, because that is a crime against humanity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ulama, there are plenty of ulamas condemn such acts, like such act, whether you are you follow other religions or not. So, Mr. Speaker, I have one or two questions to the proponent of the resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
You will condemn the act of the Russian government against the Ukraine people, not the government, but the Ukraine people. Is that the condemnation that you are signifying to, Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, actually, the act itself, because it's like what you have said, any violent act should be condemned. So the act of violence committed against these innocent people is what we are condemning.
So, Mr. Speaker, You know the story between the Russia and the Ukraine? If I may know from the gentleman, Mr. Speaker, why Russia invade Ukraine?
I have a little, Mr. Speaker, but I'm very sure my fellow MP know better or know better or more information than me. So I think he can even share it with his August body, Mr. Speaker.
What I know of the little history of the two countries is that formerly, Ukraine is part of the Russian Federation. Yung tinatawag nila nung USSR, Union of Socialist Republic. Ukraine. So maybe there are something na
There's no single accurate data that are being reported. So what we have seen is just, of course, the video online of these atrocities. And of course, I think this affected more than 40 million.
In Ukraine are now stranded in the said country.
We don't have any information yet, Mr. Speaker, but wife who have go back here to the Philippines. But we don't have the number, I think, by hundreds, if my rough estimate is just correct, Mr. Speaker.
Pwede paki-flash yung resolution, Mr. Speaker, kasi
Secretariat,
paki-flash yung title ng resolution.
Secretariat, please flash the soft copy of the resolution on screen so that the members here, and including those who are in the Zoom, can appreciate the content of this resolution.
Yes. Kasi ang tanong ko kasi, are we condemning the act of invasion or are we condemning yung nangyari sa mga civilian citizens?
Yeah, the act of violence, as what they have said, Mr. Speaker. And I think it's good that he had shared about a bit of history about this conflict. And really, the resolution is meant to address the violence. So whether by any parties, the act of violence is what we are condemning here. So the story is very also important so that it will give us further knowledge about this, how this conflict really emanates.
I hope we realize, Your Honors, I hope we realize that by condemning such an act, we are technically siding with one party. So I hope we realize that. And it's going to be a regional policy of the BARM if such lords or wordings are included in the resolution. I hope we realize that.
And besides, Mr. Speaker, we have to know also the national policy if we condemn, because that is foreign matters. So we should refer to the national policy. Kailan ko tinanong, Mr. Speaker, yung title kasi ang titulo ng resolution hindi condemning. We express deepest sympathy to what happened.
Yes,
the sympathy and condemnation is different. So we only sympathize what happened to the civilians. Yun lang ang resolution, Mr. Speaker.
That would also be, in effect, siding with the Ukrainian government.
Oh.
So,
if I may explain a little bit, Mr. Speaker, that's really the intent of this resolution, to sympathize with the victims, with the innocent victims who were affected by this conflict. So whether, because I'm sure it is not only actually Ukrainian, there are also other who were affected by this conflict. You said about Filipinos who may be affected also by this.
Would it be possible, Your Honors, that we call for a ceasefire? We join the international call for a ceasefire.
Wow, that could be best, Mr. Speaker. If you can.
Please proceed, the MP Tago.
It was also printed, Mr. Speaker, in the resolution to resort to diplomatic remedies. And one of the remedies is ceasefire. Ang katanungan ko, Mr. Speaker, is if the resolution is for expressing sympathy, ano ang magiging kinahatnan ng resolusyon na ito? Ito ba ay magiging makabuluhan sa Ruso, makabuluhan sa Ukraine, makabuluhan sa ibang nasyon, sa ating bansa? At saka saan natin paano nila malalaman na we sympathize with them? Yun sanang gusto kong maliwanawan sa resolution nito. Although I agree with this resolution, kaya nga sinabi ko, any acts of atrocities, violence against innocent civilians is un-Islamic. Pero gusto ko lang linawin yun. Kung ipasa natin ang resolution nito, ano ang magiging katayuan ng resolution natin sa ating bansa, sa Russia at saka sa Ukraine? Ito ba malalaman nila?
Impisa Liga.
First and foremost, the one who will benefit really is the entire humanity. You see, it is not just the Ukrainians, but every human beings, so as not to be subjected to any violence. That one thing. And how will they know that we have sympathized para malaman ko? I think I will throw it to the body. Kung gusto talaga natin parang ma-feel na nag-sympathize tayo, so I will open it to the
proper.
Does the author also realize that in the eastern part of Ukraine there are Russian-speaking residents in the eastern part claiming that the Ukrainian government are persecuting them as well?
Yeah, actually, if even them, if they are subjected to the same violence, they should benefit from this resolution. You see, because what is at stake here is entire humanity. It is only triggered by this incident in Ukraine.
Please, MP Tago, please proceed.
Yes, in proper time, we will make amendments to the resolution in order to make it strong para malaman na tayo dito sa Bangsamoro Parliament mayroon tayong stand regarding what happens to the Ukraine. So yun lang, marami pa namang magtatanong, Mr. Speaker, yun lang katanungan ko. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Ating kasama.
Thank you. I hope we can produce a resolution that concerns only with civilian lives, no? And no longer by effect taking sides between these two parties. Because the issue on Ukraine and Russia, nobody has the expertise on that here. And I believe this is very, very internal to them. It concerns about, again, what MP Tago earlier said, it concerns about the disintegration of Russian Federation. So I hope we can really realize that. Next to interpolate is MP Professor Idi Ali. To be followed again by MP Musa Diamla, MP Tandao, and MP, the gentleman from Tawi-Tawi, MP Amil Bahar Mawalil, MP Mujahid, and then, of course, the good minority leader, MP Baintan Ampatuan. Please proceed, Professor, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. May I know if the proponent, Mr. Speaker, will allow me to ask some clarificatory questions?
Yes, you are very much, I'm very much happy to respond to your queries.
As expressed earlier by all fellow members of this parliament, the Bangsamoro Parliament is against any atrocities against humanity. But I just would like to ask the proponent, Mr. Speaker, if he has an idea or is he aware why Russia attacked Ukraine?
Like what I have said, Mr. Speaker, we are not pointing our fingers to any of these countries, but we are looking at the civilians who were affected by this conflict.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, it is very important for us, Mr. Speaker, to know of the cause of this attack. I would like to inform Mr. Speaker, the proponent, that Russia feels threat with Ukraine for a long time. And inunahan na lang po ito ng Russia. Kaya inatake ng Russia ang Ukraine. May idea po ba tayo kung anong reaction ng ating Department of Foreign Affairs, kung anong reaction ng ating gobyerno tungkol dito sa gulong ito? This is an international issue. And I just would like to find out if our Philippine government reacted to this in any way, on this attack. Because the United Nations and our country is a member of the United Nations. Have UN reacted to this, to asking Russia to stop this ongoing war? So, mayroon po ba kayong idea, Mr. Speaker, ng ating mahal na proponent, kung anong reaksyon ng ating gobyerno tungkol dito? Bago po tayo mag-react din, gusto ko rin po malaman, Mr. Speaker, na ano ang nagiging, kung mayroon man, reaksyon ng ating gobyerno ng Pilipinas.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we did not hear nor see any official documents showing the position of our president. Neither any official statement that are circulated, meaning to say our president just remained silent on this issue. So just he preferred to remain silent on this. She did not take any side or any position on this issue.
Professor Ali?
Yeah, tinatanong ko po ito, mahal naming speaker, kasi tayo po ay bahagi po rin po tayo ng Pilipinas. At kagaya ng sinabi ng ibang mga kasamahan natin po, na hindi din po tayo, ayaw din po natin na nasasaktan ang mga tao ang sino man. Kaya lang po, bilang bahagi ng Pilipinas, baka hindi po, hindi po, wala pa po reaction ng Pilipinas dahil po sa international implication po nito. So, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I think the immediate concern of this administration is to ensure the safety of OFWs working in Ukraine. That's one. And number two, I saw a news article 2 weeks ago that the administration would be willing to accept refugees from Ukraine. So far as the ongoing war is concerned, the Philippines has not yet officially take its stand. No?
Kaya nga
neutral
po,
ang Pilipinas.
Kaya po, Mr. Speaker, ang nakikita ko rin po siguro at the right time, sa period ng amendment, pwede natin po baguhin ito. Kasi sympathetic naman po tayong lahat . Pero ang nakikita ko rin, mas mabuti pa po, kagaya ng stand ng ating gobyerno, natatanggap po ang Bangsamoro ng refugees galing Ukraine rather than making a statement na sympathizing. Actually, kung titingnan po natin, accepting refugees of Ukraine is also a sympathy Kaya lang, hindi natin sinasabi po yun, sympathetic tayo sa Ukraine, iniiwasan din po ng Pilipinas na magkakaroon po ng samaan ng loob, no, between Russia, the Russian government and the Philippine government. Yun po ang tinitingnan ko, Mr. Speaker, doon po sa kung bakit ako yung nagtatanong, Mr. Speaker, sa ating proponent tungkol dito po. So, Mr. Speaker, yun lang po, at the right time, baka po magbibigay po tayo ng amendment tungkol dito sa ating, even just the title itself, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, MP Professor Eddie Ali. The gentleman from the Chandra Mine, MP Musa Diamla, is recognized.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just like to say some concern from the proponent. If the gentleman will respond to about 1 or 2 questions.
Yes, even 3 questions, Mr. Speaker, is this proponent is very much happy to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, do we agree that the matter of the problems in Russia and Ukraine is a foreign issue, and that foreign matters is outside of the competence of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao?
Well, human life, Mr. Speaker, I think it is not a foreign issue. It is a local, international issues that we need to address, because it's every one of us are entitled to it. The right to life, the freedom of human beings. It's a international, universally recognized rights that need to be protected. And violence, as we have said, and many other speakers have mentioned, we need to really, any atrocities, we need to condemn it in the Bangsamoro.
So, Mr. Speaker, saan po natin ito ipapadala ang ating hinihingi? Sa Ukraine ba o sa Russia o saan? Mr. Speaker.
I think, Mr. Speaker, responding to that query, the question before, paano ba natin maparamdam yung ating sympathy? No? So the response to that will go along to that question also, which I have responded earlier. I throw it to this August body for us to collectively decide.
So I understand, Mr. Speaker. So anyway, I believe that we are just a regional government, and though we are granted under our BOL, but there are things that may, according to law, virus act, that may be done or undertaken by the BARM. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope that in the discussion further, we will be able to make some amendment. Although I really sympathize with the victims, but we have to understand that the issue of foreign matters and foreign policy is within the competence of the President and the Senate and the Congress of the Philippines. So that's all for Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, and I hope in the further discussion we will be able to make some amendment.
Thank you, MP Musa Diamla. The Honorable Lady from Maguindanao, MP Maleha Tandao, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Courtesies to our Speaker, Honorable Attorney Pangalian Balindong, and of course our Speaker for the day, MP Zia Adyong. I just would like to read what I posted on Facebook at the very day when I found out that there is an attack made by the Russian government against Ukraine. so that I would be able to answer why I am trying to give my input on this issue. But before that, please be informed that I think the president, in a news link, which I was able to read, has expressed his side with Ukraine. Not because he's not supporting Russia, but maybe because he was very expressive of the fate of the war victims in Ukraine. Now, as I have been very consistent in my advocacy on genocide, which has been my lifetime service to humanity, because I'm a member of humanity, whether I am a Muslim or not, a Bangsamoro or not, I am a member of humanity prior to my appointment as a member of the BTA. In fact, I am allied with a Muslim organization in the United Kingdoms that spouses peace and integration with the other communities other than the Muslims. That's why I'm very vocal when it comes to justice, because Allah has also said that there should be no oppression and Muslims will side with the oppression. And of course, I understand very well and I truly respect the wisdom of our good MP, Punduma Sani, when he said that the Western media has always been very double standard. They have always been siding with the non-Muslims, and they have always been silent when it comes to the atrocities committed against the Muslims. And yes, that's the truth. That's why I have always been an advocacy that there should be no genocide in Palestine, in Syria, and in all other parts of the world, because Muslim cleansing is against humanity. Now, why do we have to speak when we are just a member of the Bangsamoro community? We speak because we are Muslims. And as Muslims, we must stand up against oppression and genocide, whether that victim is a Muslim or not, because we are a part of the Ummah. Remember what Prophet Muhammad did when he was in Medina, when he led the Muslims and non-Muslims in one community. He was never one-sided. He was never partisan. He was always just. And we are Mohammedans, my dear fellow Bangsamoro. And Mohammedans should always respect the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, we must never be on the side of the oppressor. We must always be on the side of the oppressed. And I have nothing against Russia. I have nothing in favor of Ukraine. But my heart is bleeding for the war victims there. That's the main truth about this. We are human beings. And in the Philippines, we have the law to impose that on us. Republic Act number 9851, Philippine Act on Crimes Against International Humanitarian Law, Genocide and Other Crimes Against Humanity. And this is also against genocide. And genocide is happening in Ukraine. And there are Crimea Tatars in Ukraine who are also Muslims. They're Sunni Muslims and they are 1 million there. And they're being attacked as well. And they are also victims of the war. I'm sorry, I'm so passionate about this. But that sums it up. I am a member of humanity, not only a member of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority. I am a Muslim. I believe in Allah. I fear Allah. I don't want Allah to question me just because a non-Muslim has been attacked. Then I'm silent. And that is my role as a human being. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for that manifestation. Perhaps with the background of the Honorable Lady from Maguindanao, she can assist us and she can help the author in the improvement of this current draft of this resolution. And later in the read of amendment. Thank you, MP Candao. Next is recognize the gentleman from Tawi-Tawi, the Honorable MP Amil Bahar Mawalil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the proponent as to what started this war. Who started it?
Yes, I think it's a long story, Mr. Speaker. If we take the sharing of our MP Tago, it's a long story that actually escalate into this big conflict. because I think territorial, and I think you have mentioned about the story of Russia, where Ukraine was once formed part of it. So it's a long story.
But in the scope of your research, Your Honor, who do you think started this war?
I think if we go to the disintegration of states, so that go along with that, Mr. Speaker. So some, of course, unions usually are disintegrated, with others want to be declared as not part of their. So I think that's the story behind this, Mr. Speaker. And I think the history also of the Jewish, the Nazis which has been that resulted in the previous war, Mr. Speaker, again surfacing in this issue of the Ukraine and Russia conflict, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I am actually talking about the current timeline, Mr. Speaker. The way I see it, the root of this conflict, as far as we can see, is that Russia invaded Ukraine. Am I right, Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, actually, if we look at what is happening now.
And also, you use the word invasion in the resolution, Mr. Speaker.
May I say it, Mr. Speaker, where it does? Yeah, because if we look really at the way it was, these events are happening, there is no other team. I don't think if we can have still.
I'm just clarifying that.
But it's an invasion.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what is your definition of the word belligerent in this context, Mr. Speaker?
Well, belligerent, we usually think of.
Remember,
countries.
these are two sovereign states.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our atrocities committed by a state against another.
So that makes a belligerent state?
Yes.
Okay. So the way I understand it, Mr. Speaker, belligerent implies that both countries have been hostile as the root of the conflict. In this case, Mr. Speaker, Russia invaded Ukraine. So malinaw sino po yung unang nangyera. And I think we have to put in the proper context that Ukraine is not belligerent, but defends itself from the attack. Am I right, Mr. Speaker?
Maybe, Mr. Speaker, in the proper time, this proponent will accept any amendment to this, because the intent really of this proponent is to the victims. So whether what these two countries are doing by their act, which is against humanity, that's what we are very much
yes,
Mr. Speaker.
I understand that, Mr. Speaker, but since this is a resolution, we have to be clear about the language that we use, especially that this is a very sensitive topic. And my point, Mr. Speaker, is that Ukraine is defending itself against Russian invasion, so it is not the aggressor in this context, Mr. Speaker. So, if we are going to talk about the current timeline,
that I agree. And if I may add, prior to this war, these two parties are sovereign states with working governments. So we have to be careful with the usage of any words that may imply otherwise. Please proceed, MP Mawalin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will try to manifest some amendments during the period of amendments, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the third whereas clause, Section 8, Article 4 of the BOL provides that the Bangsamoro government respects and adheres to all international treaties and agreements binding upon the national government. I am just curious, Mr. Speaker, what particular agreement or treaties that were entered by the Philippine government that we have to abide in the context of Russian and Ukraine invasion?
Specifically, I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that one of the important treaties that are at stake to this issue is the United Declaration on Human Rights.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was a mention earlier about Filipinos residing or working in Ukraine. Do you have a figure right now, Mr. Speaker, as to how many? Because we have, aside from the fact that we are concerned with the humanitarian aspect, we also have to look at the proximity. Are we really affected by this conflict? Our people? I think this data is very important.
Yeah.
I understand the expression of sympathy.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, additional data because so far we don't have that number yet, but what we show is the one being covered on televisions that a lot of our fellow Filipinos are going back to the Philippines with their Ukrainian partners and children. But as to the number, I think that would form part of the improvement to this resolution if you have the data, if somebody can provide us.
So I look at the data, Mr. Speaker, and per the Department of Foreign Affairs, there are around 380 Filipinos that are residing in Ukraine, and some of them have been evacuated or repatriated recently. My next question, Mr. Speaker, is actually this is not a question, but a manifestation. Perhaps we can, in the period of amendment, I'm not sure if I can do this, but to do justice to this resolution and to the expression of sympathy, it is incumbent upon us to put historical background of and I will not say war, but the invasion of the Russia to the Ukraine, because I believe that this is one of the most important ingredients to this resolution. We have to establish historical facts, historical basis of this resolution. I understand that you have cited one reference, Al Jazeera, but I think we have to underscore more on the important historical facts of the Ukraine and Russian invasion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Muhalil. MP Mujahid, the gentleman from Basilan, you're recognized for your inquiries.
We can improve.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine, Mr. Speaker, is not necessarily a question, but rather a manifestation, Mr. Speaker, in support to this resolution. As a human being, Mr. Speaker, and as government entity, having a government entity in the Bangsamoro that granted to us, Mr. Speaker, we have the right to express what we feel, what is in our hearts, locally and internationally, Mr. Speaker. As stated earlier by MP, former Speaker, that stated about the saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even the Holy Quran, as emphasized by MP Attorney Faisalin Tago earlier, Mr. Speaker, that killing innocent life, a single life, as if that you kill the entire humanity. So, tayo po naranasan na po natin ang mga pangyayari po, Mr. Speaker. Ayaw na po natin mangyari sa iba yung ating naranasan, ang ating na-experience. So many of our brothers, sisters, our parents, they have already suffered the same fate as what is now happening in Ukraine. Napakarami pong nasunog ng ating mga ari-arian, bahay, mga moske natin, mga masajid natin, madrasa po natin. Ang dami po na nasira. So na-experience po natin yun. Kaya nga minsan hindi po natin mapigilan ang ating sarili na hindi natin mailabas ang ating damdamin, because we don't want this thing to be happen to anyone. With regards to our brothers, sisters in Islamic countries, like Syria, Libya, Yemen, and the rest of the Islamic countries. We all, I think, we feel the same na hindi lamang po itong expression po natin sa mga ating mga kapatid na Muslim, kundi dapat lahat po as a human being. Si Propeta Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam laking kanyang respeto. For instance, ng isang cadaver dumaan po sa kanyang unahan, na tumayo po siya kaagad. Sabi ng kasama niya o katabi niya, Propeta, hindi po siya Muslim. Nakatingin po si Propeta Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sa taong nagsabi na yun at pagsabi, bakit hindi po ba siya tao? Bakit hindi po ba siya tao? So yun po, kadaver po, yung patay na tao po na dumaan po sa unahan ni Propeta Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At pinagbabawal din po natin the Islamic ban or prohibit itong mga brutal na pagpatay po. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I manifest, I really support this resolution, Mr. Speaker, with all amendments for the enhancement and improvement of this resolution. I do agree with other brother MPs, sister MPs that they will introduce some amendment for the improvement of this resolution. And I also agree with them to look into some words that could have a bad repercussion to us, Mr. Speaker. Yan lang po ang dapat ingatin. So again, I manifest and signify my intention to be part as a co-author of this resolution, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker, just quick response to that manifestation, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, please.
Yes, first and foremost, I really appreciate the statement of MP Uja, and I heard it several times from the wisdom of our Ustad's colleagues who have mentioned phrases from the Quran. If in the amendment, we can include that even in the resolution because that really addresses the intent of this resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Lady from Maguindanao, MP Engineer Baintan Ampatua is recognized. And next is MP Ali Sanki.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. At the outset, I would like to say that I appreciate the effort of MP Saliga for coming up with the resolution. But however, Mr. Chair, based on the interpellation, I saw some lapses or some gaps on the wordings of the resolution. We need to further include some data that would really support our statements here because as based on the interpellation earlier, this is not just us, this is not just the BTA, but we are representing the Bangsamoro and perhaps it has bearing on the national policy, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I believe also that having one person displaced is too many. One life loss is also too many. And one country is that is devastated is actually beyond words that we cannot explain, Mr. Speaker. I sympathize with the civilians that were affected by this ongoing war. But I would like to ask further some clarification which were already asked, but I want to ask more. especially so that this involves national policy. MP Saliga, to the proponent, have you heard of any statement coming from the Department of Foreign Affairs, from the security sector, from the Office of the President, or from any relevant agency at the national level that speaks about the ongoing conflict with Russia and Ukraine?
When we wrote this resolution, Mr. Speaker, we don't have that information yet. But I think lately MP Kandao had inputted that the President have already issued some statement, but we need to have that in hand. And secondly, I think the action or the statement earlier that the President are accommodating, if any, refugees going to the Philippines, I think that's an implied statement of support, especially on the issue of humanitarian grounds, not necessarily on the...
MP Saliga, I think the question is actually, have you, as a proponent of this measure, have you directly heard or read news articles that may signify official stand from among the mentioned agencies by MP Ampatuan, besides the remarks and manifestation of your colleagues? How did you arrive into filing this resolution if you haven't heard any news pertaining to Ukraine and Russia?
None so far from the said agencies. But like what I have said, Mr. Speaker, our intent really is not so much if there are policies, law, but what is important here is the issue of its effect to the civilian. So on humanitarian issues based on the international instrument that I have mentioned. So I don't have any...
Mr. Speaker, follow up on this, Mr. Speaker. Are we saying that the national agencies are not conscious about the human lives, the properties that are being lost now? Are they not observing the international laws as of the moment?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I think it's depend upon them. Like what I have said, the President before preferred not to issue any statement or just remain silent on this, not sided with any of these two countries who are in conflict. So I don't say that maybe silence is also another form of response to the issue rather than issuing any statement. So silence in itself is also a response, actually.
Mr. Speaker, once we pass this resolution, Mr. Speaker, would it not mean that we are overstepping the concerned agencies and even the Office of the President for that matter? Because as mentioned earlier, there's not yet any pronouncement coming from any of the offices coming from the national government.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think my fellow colleague also mentioned about that. The loss of a single life is tantamount to loss of many lives. So with this, I think it's every individual, especially us, we could, being an autonomous government also, we can issue any statement without violating any international or national laws. So issuing statement will it, I think that's also my question to myself. Is issuing a statement of sympathy violate any laws? Or is it a shall we call it usurpation on the authority of the national government?
But this is not simply a statement. Remember,
Yes,
this is
Mr.
a resolution.
Speaker.
A resolution is a policy of the region.
Yes, precisely, Mr. Speaker, because in my opening statement, Mr. Speaker, this is not just us. We are bringing here the voice of the Bangsamoro, We are representing the regional government here, and perhaps this has some implications on the national policy, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I'm asking, Mr. Speaker, what if you are in the position of the DFA or in the office of the president or in the security sector? Once we pass this resolution, what would be the effect and what would be the implication to the national policy, Mr. Speaker?
MP Saliga.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, this humble representation is very much welcome if ever that would be the decision of this collective body to receive or request statement from them, official statement, so as to really strengthen this resolution. This humble representation would be willing to.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say, Mr. Speaker, is at least we could have consulted any of, even at the local level. For example, we have a security sector here. We have the 6ID, the PNP, that represents also the local security. And perhaps you can get their opinion about this matter, Mr. Speaker, before bringing the matter to this parliament, Mr. Speaker, because this is not a small issue. This is an international issue. As I've stated earlier, we should further study the wordings here because we might be siding one country over the other. So I think we should be very careful once we approve this or once we act on this. There should be a review team that would look at the implications of whatever wordings that we are putting in this resolution, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Ampatuan, for that clarification and inquiry. Next to follow is MP Lisanki, to be followed by the gentleman from Pagalungan, MP Abdullah Hashim. And then after Abdullah Hashim, to be followed by the gentleman from Sulu, MP Engineer Don Loong, and then gentleman from Basilan at tawi-tawi, MP Udja. MP Alisanki, Your Honor, please proceed with your questions.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. I just would like to sort of call the attention of this august body, considering that this resolution of my friend MP Romeo Saliga cited among others his justification, yung Section 8, Article 4 of the BOL, provides that the Bangsamoro government respect and adheres to all international treaties and agreements binding upon the national government. This just to remind the body that when the Bangsamoro Organic Law was crafted, there were some sort of parameters. I am referring to the powers such as exclusive power of the state. Meaning that exclusive power is not delegated to the BARM. Next is the shared power. Yung bang pwedeng pasukan ng BARM, pwedeng pasukan ng government. And the third is delegated powers. Yung bang binigyan na talaga sa atin. So based on these parameters, it appears that the proponent is talking about matters that are not delegated to the BARM because it involves international relation or foreign relation. And we are all aware that the power of the state that were not delegated to the BARM were clearly enumerated. And that is covered by this Section 8, Article 4 of the BOL. And the Honorable Gentleman is talking about international relations governing animosities or sort of civil strife in a foreign country, wherein that power is not vested to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Government, since it falls under the exclusive power of the state. But be that as it may, considering that there are also international agencies of government wherein the national cultural communities of indigenous peoples are also covered by international treaties such as the United Nations Convention on Indigenous Peoples, where I was fortunate to attend in 2009 at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. So the honorable proponent made mention about this situation obtaining in Russia and Ukraine. But in another resolution also,
he made mention about ancestral domain claim, which is covered by another agreement, but it has something to do with indigenous people. So just a reminder, Mr. Speaker, that if we are going to pass this resolution as if we are dipping our finger on matters not delegated to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Just a food for thought. Because to my mind, the way I look at it, this resolution is within that segregated power, exclusive power of the state. Are we now going to dip our fingers on that powers which was never delegated to the environment? Just a food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Sanki, for that observation. The gentleman from Pagalungan, MP Abdullah Hashim, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. I have some concerns and maybe a few questions to the proponent. So, one of my concerns is, as it has been stated before by the other honorable MPs, is the wording. Perhaps we should be a bit careful because this involves two countries, and of course it also involves our own country, the Philippines, and we must also not preempt the official stance of the Philippines, of course through our President Duterte. Also, going to my question, would the proponent agree that we should just, instead of including the word Ukrainian, I just use the word civilian or something like it, because even just the use of the term of the country perhaps, or the citizens, perhaps it would look as if we are picking a side, to put it simply. Of course, we already know that the civilians in the country of Ukraine are suffering, and actually not only the civilians, but all of those who are, I mean, not only the Ukrainians, but all of those who are in Ukraine. Like I have seen that there are some OFWs there, and there are other also, they call this migrants there from other countries. So perhaps that's, so what would be the, may I know what is the thoughts of the proponent on that suggestion?
Mr. Speaker, during the period of amendment, I will respond to that, Mr. Speaker. But that's a good proposal, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
I think
Mr.
there was a
Speaker.
question, MP Saliga, to give respect to your MPs, to your colleagues. If there are questions asked of you, I think it is just fair that you adequately provide the answer and not burden the interpellators with their task to improve your resolution.
If I am responding to that, Mr. Speaker, deleting, I think the proposal is to delete the Ukrainian, which we can do it during the period of amendments, but now. But I agree to that, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Please proceed, MP Abdullah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Also, my other concern, although I don't want to sound like a Russian apologist, because I'm not, but the use of the term invasion, because although as we see in the news, which as has been established, the news is, there are some biases. You can never remove the biases. It looks like an invasion, but the official stance so far of Russia it is a military operation. So it is the official stance of the country. So that's just my concern. This is not a question, just my concern. And maybe perhaps some of the, in the period of amendments, maybe some of those who make their own amendments, maybe they can also consider that, perhaps find other wordings on it. And then lastly, because we have mentioned, of course, the concern in regards with our religion, of course, we don't know, Allah hates oppression. Dhulm, Allah hates oppression. And in a hadith, we should aid the oppressor and the oppressed. So in aiding the oppressor, we should make them stop the oppression. But then I also would like to remind that the hadith on that says in its English translation, whosoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. And if he is not able to do so, then let him change it with his tongue. And if he is not able to do so, then with his heart. And scholars use this also to clarify that changing an evil has to be in our abilities. So we should also there are levels, and we can consider our ability. So of course, we know we are limited. We are focusing only on a region. We cannot involve ourselves in foreign matters. So we should also consider that in changing the said evil, which is the oppression. So that's all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Hashim. The gentleman from Sulu, MP Engineer Don Loong, is recognized for his inquiries, to be followed by MP Uja. Majority Leader, how many more MPs would you allow to inquire after MP Uja?
The MP, and then last is MP Sultan Rimbang, Mr. Speaker, and we will decide on this matter.
All right. So after MP Uja, MP Sultan Rimbang. Your Honor, please proceed, MP Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire if the proponent is aware of the United Nations General Assembly resolution on the issue on Ukraine and the stand of the Philippine government.
Yes, what we have mentioned here, Mr. Speaker, is about the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. That's the basic information reference that we use in this document. And as to the position, like what I have said, Mr. Speaker, we don't have any official yet as of this moment.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Philippines has already supported United Nations General Assembly resolution. In fact, the Philippines is one of the 140 nations that that condemned the situation that is happening in Ukraine. And the Philippines also voted on the Asia Pacific voting. The Philippines also voted on the same issue to call for the cessation of hostilities in Ukraine. In fact, if you would check the news published, the president even mentioned that the president is willing to support the US if the tension escalates and might open support facilities in the Philippines, which is quite concerning. But the point is, the Philippines had expressed clearly its stand on the issue. In fact, the Department of Foreign Affairs had also issued a statement dated February 28 on the issue of the United Nations General Assembly resolution that calls for the cessation of hostilities in Ukraine. So my point is, Mr. Speaker, that the Philippines has spoken, even the President has spoken, that such hostility to the civilians, and even the World Health Organization had stated that they were calling for an end to the attacks of medical facilities. And if we would check the videos on YouTube, we could clearly see that there are clear attack on civilian communities in Ukraine. Whatever the situation, I think I would support a statement
calling for the cessation of hostilities in Ukraine, mainly because if we will remain silent, while it's clear that the president had stated and the Philippines had stated and the DFA had stated that they are against it, I think the voice of the Bangsamoro must be clear that we will make a statement whether those who are being attacked are Muslims, Christians, or whatever ethnicity or nationality, that we will always make our voice heard, that we are against lawless violence, attacks on sovereign countries, and especially the attack on children, women, elderly, and civilians. This will be precedent on the Bangsamoro government to make our voices heard, because if we will remain silent on this period, then the time might come that the Bangsamoro might also become subject to, and God forbid, to atrocities, and other areas, other peoples, and other ethnicities will also be silent. Be that as it may, I'm supportive of the resolution. However, we just need to clarify some statements, as what MP Amir had mentioned. The word belligerence may need to be changed to more appropriate terms, and the calls to be more sensitive, because as we know, even the Philippines is in the process of buying Russian helicopters at this period. So I hope the resolution can be drafted in a more mild manner, asking the parties to go back to the negotiation table, de-escalating the conflict, and hoping for the political settlement by both Russia and Ukraine.
Thank you, MP Don Long. I think that's a manifestation. Would you be willing to provide all this information, include that in the draft resolution, so that we can be attuned with the official policy of the national government with regard to the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, so that the issue on exclusive rights and etc. would be answered, that we are not actually separating from the foreign policy that the national government adopted insofar as this ongoing conflict is concerned. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You're citing the exact UN Security Resolution.
There's a United Nations General Assembly resolution, Mr. Speaker, that is approved with the Philippines supporting the resolution, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for that information. And MP Don, we humbly request that you be here during the period of amendments so that we can improve tremendously and substantially the current draft resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Don Long. MP Udja, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While in agreement with those observations that we must be consistent with the stand of our Philippine government as far as this worsening issue in Ukraine and Russia is concerned, I have this short manifestation and support to the resolution or the subject for some amendments. Presuming that there are as well Muslims in Russia and Muslims in Ukraine and the nearby states, we can invoke the Quranic verse, قال الله سبحانه وتعالى من آيات الله فأصلحوا بين أخويكم إلى آخر الآية. Meaning we are obliged or mandated by the Quran to move or to initiate a move to at least help mitigate and reconcile the conflicting parties in order for the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim nation, will no longer be suffering from the adverse consequence of the conflict or of the hostilities. So by that injunction of the Quran, I strongly support the resolution to be passed while it is subject for some amendments. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Speaker.
MP Udja. And the last interpreter from the Zoom, MP Sultan Rimbang. Please proceed, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker of the Day, Deputy Speaker, Shia Alonto. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh sa lahat ng aking mga kasama na membro ng Parliament.
sa mga staff guests na nandito sa loob na parlamento. So Mr. Speaker, ako po ay nagpapasalamat sa brothers natin na MP Saliga, MP Saliga, dahil po sa resolusyon nila ito na 675 na magtulong tayo sa iba yung dagat sa Russia o sa Ukraine. So sa akin naman, Mr. Speaker, siguro magkuha tayo na guidelines sa ating mahal na Pangulo o sa national government. Kailan lang ay ang presidente ay nag-order na evacuate yung mga kababayan natin na Pilipino na nandun sa Ukraine. So siguro mag-courtesy call ang BARM, government, tayo sa national government para po mayroon po tayong idea o guidelines na anong klase ang pagtulong natin sa Ukraine o sa Russia. Siguro ang panawagan ko po, ang pagkikiusap ko sa mamamayan ng BAM, magdasal na lang tayo sa mga kapatid natin doon na Muslim na naapekta doon sa gira. At pangalawa, siguro sana hiniling natin na may stop itong awayan ng Ukraine sa Russia. Dahil alam po natin na baka madamay po ang bansa nating Pilipinas. Pag madamay po tayo, yan ang hiniling nating kay Allah na hindi mangyari yan. Sana po, dahil ang presidente po natin, magaling siya, palagi siya sa gitna sa mga nangyari sa iba yung dagat. Kaya nagpapasalamat po ako sa membro ng Parliament sa agarang paggawa ng resolusyon na paano mapag-usapan yung problema sa iba yung dagat, lalo po sa Ukraine. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Rimbang, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we discussed so much of this issue, Mr. Speaker, and there are so many proposed amendments on this particular resolution, Mr. Speaker. To give ample time to MPs to propose amendments, Mr. Speaker, I move to defer consideration of this resolution until tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. But before that, Mr. Speaker, I move to close the period of interpellation.
Period of debate interpellation is hereby closed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to defer this resolution until tomorrow so that MPs who would like to propose amendments, they can formulate on this particular.
Thank you. I would like to request in particular MP Don Loong to please furnish us with your amendments so that we can improve this resolution. A motion to defer the consideration of PR 675. Is there any objection on the parliamentary status of BTA resolution number 675 is under the period of amendment to be reopened tomorrow? Thank you, MP Saliga, for your time and for defending your resolution.
Thank you.
Resolution of PR 675 is hereby deferred. Please proceed, Majority Leader.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I move to consolidate PR number 681, 682, and 683, and 684, and 691, Mr. Speaker, because they have the same subject matters, Mr. Speaker.
Is that an omnibus motion?
Yes, that's a motion for consolidation, Mr. Speaker. To consolidate PR number 681, 682, 683, 684, and 691. They have the same subject matter, Mr. Speaker.
So there's a motion to consolidate all four resolutions dealing with the same subject.
Five resolutions, Mr. Speaker.
5 resolutions dealing with the same subject matter. Is there any objection to the motion? None. So 681, 682, 684, and 689 are now consolidated resolutions.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have an omnibus motion, Mr. Speaker, for to dispense with the period of interpellation and debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I further move for the approval of those consolidated resolutions, Mr. Speaker.
Another omnibus motion to defer the opening of period of debate, period of amendment, period of and proceed directly with the approval of these 5 consolidated resolutions. It has been seconded. Any objection to the motion? Hearing none. PRs 681, 682, 683, 684, and 689 consolidated resolutions are hereby approved.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other agenda on order of business, I move to adjourn the session until tomorrow at 1:30 in the afternoon.
Session is adjourned until tomorrow at 1:30 in the afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Alaihissalam warahmatullahi